If you're into astrology, you probably think of your weekly forecast or your monthly forecast as sort of like an energetic weather forecast. We watch the weather because we want to plan our day according to the weather. If it's snowing, I want to know so I can wear boots and prepare. But we don't really know how to do that with astrology, meaning you listen to your weekly forecast or your monthly forecast, you hear the transits, but then you don't know what to do next. How do you use the information you get about the astrological weather to plan? Astrological planning can be really easy. I think a lot of us hear that phrase and think, I need to be an expert in astrology, or it's all about electional astrology, and I have to be really schooled in all of these Renaissance techniques for how to choose the right election. And for me, in my personal practice, there is a much simpler way for us to not only use astrology to plan, but to create flow in our lives by being aware of the cosmic weather. So what I'm going to do is show you my planning process and where astrology fits into that. I'll show you the back end of what I use to plan with astrology and in general, and hopefully make this process very simple for you as well. So the first step in this process is going to be to obtain your personal transits. And notice I said your personal transits and not the general forecast transits. The difference between the two being when you listen to a week ahead forecast, that is the astrology for everyone. So like right now, Mars has just retrograded back into Cancer. That is the astrological weather. That's what's happening for everyone. But for different people, Mars moving back into Cancer means Mars will be pinging off your personal birth chart placements. For example, I know someone whose moon is at 28 degrees Cancer. That means Mars is moving back to conjoin or be in the same place as their natal moon at 28 degrees Cancer. That is way more important than the fact that Mars is moving back into Cancer. So that's what you want to know. You want to know, for if you're planning with astrology, what is happening between the astrology of the moment and your birth chart. And there is a free, simple way to obtain that information with Astro-Seek.com. Now, I know a lot of people like Astro.com. It's great and it's very robust, but it's also not super user-friendly. I like Astro-Seek better. So that's what I'm going to show you how to use. So once you go to Astro-Seek.com, you'll click on the personal transit calendar. From there, you'll put in your birth chart data, and you can change these settings. I leave them all planets for both transit and natal in all major aspects. If you work with the minor aspects, you can add those in too. If you want to focus on a specific natal planet or a specific transiting planet, you can change all that up. But if you're just trying to get a feel for what is happening this month with my natal chart, I would just leave those settings as is. You'll change the year and the month to whatever you want it to be. You can also work with your progressions, but that's not what this video is about. And then I use whole sign houses, so I'm going to go ahead and change that. Oh, and then I click calculate. I didn't put a birth city in there. You'll need to do that, but for the sake of our example, we're good. And then from there, you're going to want to take this information and move it somewhere else. If you use a paper calendar, you can print it. I'm a digital planner myself, so what I do is I actually move this data into Notion, but you don't need to use Notion. You can move it into a Google Doc or Google Sheet, so I'll show you that. You would just drag, click down and drag to highlight everything. You would copy, and then if you paste regularly in a Google Doc, this is what it'll look like. Ugly, but you could reformat it. If you paste plain text, this is what it'll look like. Also pretty ugly. I think the move, if you're not going to use Notion, is to paste it into a Google Sheet. It's where things look the nicest. And then those links will stay live and you can go look at your chart. If you're familiar with how to read a circle chart, then that is a really handy feature to have there. So that is step one, is just obtain that information. Step two is going to be to list your weekly goals. So let me take you over to my Notion space where I do this, and I'll show you how to do that. Before we do anything with the actual astrology, step two of this planning process is to revisit your goals. I want you to look at your goals before you look at the transits. And I know that might seem odd because aren't we planning with astrology? We are, but astrology doesn't dictate how we live our lives. Astrology tells us what the cosmic weather is going to be like, and it's helpful to know because we can decide how we proceed with our goals based on how conducive the weather is for us to move forward. But my personal view is that we don't use astrology to decide whether or not we're going to go through with the goal. We use astrology to decide how we will go through with the goal. It seems like a subtle difference, but to me it's very important because astrology does not negate free will. And if we look at the transits first and we say, ooh, this week is looking rough, I don't know if I should go ahead with that thing I was planning on doing, you've let astrology take your agency at that point. And I don't think that's a very productive, useful, or helpful way to use astrology. Your goals are written in stone. They are things we are doing no matter what, but the way that we get there, the tasks and how we do them and when we do them are written in sand. We can move those puzzle pieces around in the way that it makes sense for both our material and our spiritual lives. And that's where astrology comes in. It can help us decide how to proceed, not whether or not to proceed. Okay, off my soapbox. We are inside Notion, which is the platform I mentioned earlier that I use for literally everything. And this particular document we're looking at is my Cosmic Witch Astrology Almanac. It's what I personally use to plan and reflect with astrology. It's pretty incredible because it's got every astrology transit for 2025 already pre-programmed. And when you buy it, it comes with a tutorial for how to pull your transits from Astro-Seek into this database so you can easily see your personal transits alongside the general transits that are happening for everyone. So you can find out more about how to get this down below. But for now, I want to show you my actual process because this is the same template that I personally use myself. Step 1 was get the transits. Step 2 was review the goals that are coming up. Now, again, the goals are unchangeable, unmovable. The goals are happening. They're things that we are doing regardless, but the tasks and the way we go about them, the projects required, can be moved. So let's say, I'm going to go to January here. And I'm going to go ahead and group this by week because we're going to pretend that we're doing a weekly thing, and I want to change that to week. Okay, and it's January 6th, so we're looking at this week. So I'm gonna just leave this here for now and come back over to my Astro Planner. Now, there's not a place for your goals in these databases, but somewhere your goals should live in a physical or digital form. They should be written out and not just in your head. And that is what you want to go look at first. All right. So a goal that might be associated with launch a podcast is make my voice heard, right? It's something abstract, but we get a sense of what that is. And the thing too about goals is there's lots and lots of different ways that we could accomplish them. So launch a podcast is certainly a project, and a project, by the way, is anything that has more than one task involved and has a definitive end. So make my voice heard does not have a definitive end. That makes it more of a goal. Launch a podcast, there is a moment in which the podcast is launched. So that is a project. Now, of course, all of us are going to have multiple goals that are live at a time, right? Like I think I have a list, my master list has probably 10 to 15 goals, but at a given time, I'm focused on 3 at most. I found more than 3 at a time, I just feel frazzled, overwhelmed, and like I'm not doing enough. So I minimize my amount of goals I'm working on at a given time to 3. And then the projects you're working on, you're going to have at least 3 projects, right? Because if it's a focus goal, it's something you're working on right now. And the projects are what take the goal from the abstract land of like, here's the vision to the concrete material realm of here's how I'm getting it done. So if my goal is maybe to make my voice heard, and the project associated with that, at least at this time, is to launch a podcast. And I've got these things I need to do. That takes us into step 3, which is where the rubber meets the road. And we match up and plot the tasks based on the transits. Now, I'm going to actually take this to the calendar view because I think that is a little bit nicer for this kind of thing that we're doing. And I can also change this to a weekly view as well. So let's go to layout, calendar, show by week. Cool. So now I can see it as a week here, and that's a little bit easier. Okay, so I know that Mercury square Neptune, that doesn't bode well for great communication. So I definitely don't want to actually launch the podcast on this day, nor do I even want to buy a mic. I don't really want anything to do with mercurial things, which has to do with communication, money, organization. So if anything on this day, I think it might be nice to do some art, design some cover art, especially as Mars moves back into Cancer. Maybe this is a great time for me to do some kind of artwork and really let my more, is it right brain? I think it's right brain. Your more right brain side kind of thrive. And by the way, if I was looking at this week in particular, you can see like Monday, not great for mercurial things. Wednesday, Mercury enters Capricorn. That is a great thing for Mercury because that means Mercury was in Sagittarius where it's in detriment. So better day for Mercury things on Wednesday. It's also Mercury's day on Wednesday, but the sun is squaring Chiron. So that's just telling us that Wednesday might bring up some painful stuff, and it's also a better day for communication. So if I was hell-bent on launching the podcast this week, I would wait until at least Wednesday to do it, and probably Wednesday would be the day that I would do it. What's really cool about this particular setup is that you can easily link the tasks to the transits or vice versa. So if I want to link design cover art to this transit, I can do it in one of two ways. I can click on the task, and then in the transits tab, I can type in cover art, and it'll, oh, that's the wrong one. Whoops, it's got to be in task, cover art. There it is. Boom, I can link it just like that. And then you can see down here, the transit is linked. The other way you can do this is the opposite. You can open up the task and link it that way too. So it's a two-way connection, and that makes it really easy to connect transit with action. But of course, if you're doing this on a paper planner or whatever you're using, the process is exactly the same. And that's obtain your transits, look at your goals, and then decide what the best course of action is going to be with this particular energy this week for your goals. Your goals, remember, they're set in stone. You are going for them regardless of what crazy shit is going on in the cosmic ethers. But the way that you go about it, you will ebb and flow on that part of things based on the astrology of the moment. So that's a really simple way that you can plan with the transits. You don't need to be an expert. Let me know what questions you have about astrological planning, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.